One of the most inspiring thoughts that we received from the government of India was the thought of Sarva Siksha Abhiyan. What an audacious goal we as a people have set for ourselves. 1.3 billion people and growing fast. And we set a goal that every one of us would be educated. When we really look at this goal, this one audacious goal that we have set for ourselves, it is something that sets us thinking about possibilities. And wherever we set a goal of this magnitude, there definitely are going to be challenges. There are some challenges that are very obvious, like the challenge of divide. A challenge of divide between the haves and the have-nots. Divide of urban versus rural. Divide of attitudinal challenges. Various challenges of divide. That is very obvious. It's nothing thought-provoking. We are aware of that and we have to find solutions for that. But another challenge that is not very obvious at first sight is that of the gaps in education itself. When we look at a child's education, the gravity of those piles of books which completely keep away the aesthetics of a child's personality development. The psychological, emotional development of a child, the spiritual development of a child are all barred away by those piles of books. I was in a school in Vijayawada doing an art and craft workshop. All the children were bright and sunny and throwing away, enjoying themselves with colors. And in the corner there were 4 or 8 students sitting with books in their hands and their heads turned this way. I went and asked them, what happened to you? They said, 10th class happened to us. The entire books are a barrier for these children. How do we redefine our education system to ensure that a holistic personality development happens? And when there are challenges, people come forward to work. People come forward to create solutions. That is not something that is difficult to imagine. And there are many people working towards solving these challenges. There are NGOs, 3.1 million of them. There are more NGOs, double the number of NGOs than there are schools in India. There are more NGOs than policemen in India. And these NGOs are working towards solutions. And after the CSR budget, the CSR law has come in, the corporate sponsored programs have started coming in. They are trying to work for solutions. But the challenge that comes here is that these are all divergent. Every institution has got its own goal, has its own vision of how to solve the problem. There lies the problem, where the school suddenly finds itself being pulled in different directions. One organization says, this is the right way to do it. Another organization gives one more solution. How do we create a solution that is convergent? We need a framework that allows people to get their energies together. And that framework is the holy grail that we are searching for. I was in a university. After finishing 12 years of education in Mumbai, I went to a university and found myself filled with knowledge, filled with science, and I was calculus stud. But I could not answer questions of my teacher because he made me stand in front of a blackboard. My legs were trembling, my throat was parched. I realized that I lacked confidence. And as I shared this story with 17-year-olds in Kalimpong, I found them hanging onto every single word that I was uttering. And I could realize that I was telling their story. The entire personality development of a child does not happen in our education system today. But in this university that I went to, the Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, there was something different. We got options of dance, drama, sports, activities, ownership of activities, a deep spiritual grounding, a deep cultural exposure that left us with a sense of possibilities of infinite possibilities, telling that we can touch anything and that would turn into gold. That confidence is left behind after an education that is integral in nature, where every living moment of our life is teaching us something, where everything in the college environment has been designed with purpose. How do we create these environments? And our goal as a program has been to create these kinds of environments for every child in the country. That became our mission statement: integral education for all, by all. We are very aware that education for all, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, will remain an empty dream unless each one of us feels that we can and must contribute to the field of education. And that is the basis of creating this framework. We'll go into the components of this framework. The first component are the 4 pillars of integral education. We call it the 4 pillars. The first one is about insightful. We call it igniting the minds with insightful ideas. It's about the cognitive domain, making sure that the child understands the subjects completely. Not just understands, but has complete insight about the subject. He knows the subject in and out. It is intellectual in nature. That is the first and the primary pillar of the program. The second, something that is not so much focused upon in education system today, is about inspiration. I remember as a 10th class student making a group of around 15 of us on maybe sometime in February 1989. Maybe probably it's the anniversary of that day when we had the farewell party of our 10th class graduation. We had made a queue and went and shook hands, 15 of us went and shook hands with every teacher, but bowed down and touched the feet of 2 teachers, Teacher Maya and Teacher Meena. What difference did they make? And what statements were we 15-year-olds making to the teaching fraternity? That these teachers stood out. They made a difference so deep that we bowed down in reverence. The holy grail that we should be searching for is, how do we benchmark these principles? How do we get the best practices of these teachers and make it possible to have components of that inspiration injected into every teacher in the nation? That education is not only about filling the head, but about irrigating the heart. How do we create a teacher today? I'm looking out for the admission of my young daughter in class 5, and I'm already finding myself going to the principal of this school to take life advice. That is the serenity of this lady. We call her Muni Auntie. How do we create Maya, Meena and Muni again and again and again? How do we create this magic in our education system? That is the holy grail of inspiration that we are looking for. The third one is about enjoyable. Our motto is, thank God it is Monday. Not TGIF, but TGIM. How do we make sure that children, not just children, but teachers and principals want to come back to school, that school is no longer a drudgery? What activities can we have to make that possible? And finally, it's participation. A huge portion of society, a huge portion of our education, of our students are deprived of education because of the first benchers who are answering every question. Do you agree with me? Before the teacher finishes the question, there are 4 of them raising their hands, and I would sit there, question to complete karne do yaar. Let her at least finish the question. And I remember the story of, I remember my friend Rafiq, who used to sit in the last bench, completely detached from the classroom. It's only when a teacher gave a project that he came out. Otherwise, he was a binary marks chap. Whatever be the denominator, he would get binary, 0 or 1. He was my classmate, he was the classmate of many of my seniors. Right? And that is how children get deprived of education. And when this teacher gave a project of making a a pinhole camera, he was the one who came up with the best project. And today I know, wherever Rafiq is, he is doing things with his hands. He's a hands-on chap. He may not be an intellectual man. Participative is about that. It's about the psychomotor domain. It's about getting hands-on. How do we make education have each of these pillars? That is the holy grail that we are searching for. Not only that, there is another dimension. We talk about the domains of influence. The whole purpose of education is to influence the child towards positivity. Do you agree with me? So when we influence the children, there are areas where we can influence. And the most powerful area of influence is the classroom. That's why the teacher threatens you, telling them, you come to the classroom, I'll see you there. Is it not? The teacher feels most powerful in the classroom. But classroom time is limited. Classroom is only for 45 minutes or 40 minutes in a school. The moment the teacher feels that my domain of influence is merely the classroom, she abdicates responsibility of anything beyond the subject. She feels that I can only teach physics or chemistry or mathematics in the classroom. Anything beyond that, not my responsibility. We try to extend that domain of influence. We convince teachers that you can influence the child in the corridor, in the campus, in the community. The design of the place can influence a child. That is, in the second domain of learning, or called corridor or immersive spaces, the space in which the child is immersed, there is learning that is happening asynchronously. Even when the teacher is not talking, the learning is happening. If you draw a protractor around on the floor near a door, every time the child opens and closes the door, he is learning about degrees. Is the teacher teaching? No. The door is teaching. The teacher has passed on the responsibility to the space. If we design spaces creatively, the domain of influence increases. From the corridor to the campus is the shift from the house to the home, from the four walls to the love and affection. The campus is a domain of an enabling culture. The amount of time that we spend on designing classroom activities, if we spend a fraction of that time in designing campus culture, very deliberately defining campus culture, the impact would be manifold. That is what we are looking at. And finally, taking the domain of influence to the community. The example that we saw just recently from Tata Power is about the community influencing the children. The children influencing the community. It's a two-way process. It's up and it's in and out. It's not just one directional, unidirectional. To be aware of each of these dynamics in education is the importance of integral education. And we present these two things in the form of a matrix. The IIEP by 4C matrix. When Cognizant was participating in supporting schools, they worked with about 190 schools, and they saw this matrix. The only thing they could measure was about the number of hours of volunteering. But when they saw this matrix, they realized that they could measure impact, and they have adopted this matrix and are helping us to refine this matrix further. That is convergence. When Tata Consultancy Services listened to our program, they came up with, for the last 6 years, they came up with a project, and they are working with us for the last 6 years, developing a software that allows people to collaborate. That people across the world, teachers from across the best schools of the other side of the divide, the best schools, are creating content to reach teachers on this side of the divide. The culture, the haves and have-nots, the divide between the haves and the have-nots is being bridged through a collaborative software where teachers create small units of content. There are various opportunities of volunteerism that comes in. In the corridor, the power of creativity that brings affinity towards the school. The whole attendance of the school, the admissions into schools have increased because of corridor level activities. And it is presented in the corridor. If you see the second column, that's where it's a participative corridor. When we look at assemblies in schools, the entire nature of assemblies in schools have changed because Deloitte created Impact Day programs. And on the Impact Day, 5,000 employees of Deloitte spent an entire day creating content for the Vidya Vahini program, of which I am the director. They created content in such a way that it could be used in the schools, and one of those modules were quiz modules. They created about 80 quiz modules that have transformed the school assemblies. Children are looking forward, they are going through books to learn the answers. The curiosity of the children have zoomed up like anything because of community participation in a convergent manner. We have diversity of participation. Here is an old auntie who calls up every day or thrice a week to a teacher, and her only role is to speak in English. to that rural teacher. 800 such pairs talk every day, talk weekly, thrice, to make sure that the quality of English in rural schools are improving. The energy levels in the staff room is of a different level because the teachers realize that community is participating, community is taking interest in what we do. Phone Your Friend is one of the most important and the most popular volunteering opportunities in the Vidya Vahini program. And finally, the artists, the dramatic artists, the people who love drama, who really like drama, who like acting, they are the ones who support children in creating these programs. And the impact of this program is not there. I'd like to draw your attention to that small youngster who is standing behind with a spear. A youngster like that was in one school who would get 8 out of 25, 7 out of 25 in mathematics consistently. However much the teachers insisted on him studying more, however much they drilled him, he would get 8 or 7. Probably he loved those numbers. But he got an opportunity to stand on a big stage, a small role on a big stage. The selection process, the way the travel to a distant place, the program itself, the grandeur of the program, the next exam, he got 23 out of 25. The impact of one domain having, the domain of community having an impact on the intellectual development of a child. This is what we mean by convergence, and if you have to work for convergence, there has to be a student-focused organization. This is our organization structure. We don't have a hierarchical organization structure. This is how we define ourselves. Every single team that we have, the content team, the training team, the partners team, the technology team, the planning team, every single team is aligned towards the student, which continues to think, we continue to think how to make sure that the student is benefited. It is only because of this organization structure that allows participants, allows various kinds of participants to come together, to converge, that we have been able to reach these many schools today. We are in 156 schools in the last 6 years we have started working, and that's the growth of the organization that we see. When we work with purpose, when we take passionate interest in the field of education, when we create an organization that allows genuine convergence, genuine collaboration, that's when magic happens. And that is the convergence for integral education for all. Thank you very much.